apologize again, Mr. Speaker, and I apologize to my friend across the way, the Honourable Minister. But I do feel that this speech, while fascinating in terms of the fates of European governments, strays quite far from the question before us, which is, does this House not need to express itself, meet in committee, and find some way to provide rules and guidelines so that omnibus bills of all manners do not stray from one single purpose? And I don't hear in the Minister's speech any reflection of the question before the House.
The Honourable Minister State on the same point of order.
Well, yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I actually, not very much of this speech is actually reflected on the European situation. We can certainly expand on that. But I would suggest that I'm drawing a link because of the lack of being able to pass legislation to actually react to the world economic crisis is why Europe is still having trouble. And I'm just trying to explain that we do need comprehensive legislation that was passed in this House in the spring. We need a second one, Mr. Speaker. We've got more to do yet. And I would suggest that everything that I'm talking about here is actually drawn back to why we need to be able to pass, table, discuss, and pass comprehensive legislation.
I think that makes
I thank both the Minister of State and the Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands for their interventions. And I understand that this, the question of relevance arose earlier this morning prior to my taking the chair at noon. I would like to make 2 points, the first a general point and the second more specific. In general terms, there are rules in the standing orders related to relevance and repetition, and I think it's fair to say that over the years, chair occupants have taken a rather wide view of those two matters for the reason that the chair does not want to unduly limit a debate in this House and the opportunity for members to bring the facts that they feel are important or relevant to bear. There are times when the chair asks members to come back to the matter at hand, but over the 8+ years that I've been in this place, I think it's fair to say that the chair has taken a relatively wide view of the question of relevance. I think it's also fair to say that members, when they are giving a 10 or 20-minute speech, often will use examples and make arguments that wander away from the principal matter before the House, but it is their responsibility to somehow connect it back to the question at hand. And I would encourage all honourable members to do two things. First of all, is when they are making a presentation to this House, that they are mindful of the business that is before the House and that they be respectful of that business as well as the process. This place will function better if all honourable members make a good faith effort to do that. And secondly, I would also remind all honourable members that wishing for a much narrower definition of what is relevant and wishing for the chair to take a much narrower definition of that would have consequences beyond the matter that is before the House at that time. So I ask all honourable members if they could balance those two principles. Again, it has been my experience that most of the time members do this very well, and while some members take a circuitous route to come to the matter at hand, most of the time they do that. Now, a more specific comment. I have reviewed the blues from earlier today when the question of relevance arose, and when the Honourable Minister of State rose to speak, I must say that I listened very carefully to what he was saying in order to measure the relevance. And without getting into the substance of the debate before the House today, there's a question, I believe, of the relevance of omnibus or comprehensive legislation and at what point that becomes inappropriate. And then secondly, the more specific suggestion is that the House ought to refer this to Procedure and House Affairs so that they can come back with a ruling. I heard the Minister of State say that he disagrees with the motion that is before the House today, that he feels that omnibus or comprehensive legislation is not inherently unacceptable or inappropriate in this place. He further argued that matters such as the budget and budget implementation bills are by necessity broad in scope and that it was on that basis that he would vote against the motion. And subsequently, my expectation is that that the Minister of State is bringing specific examples to light of how he feels, essentially making the argument that comprehensive legislation is in fact necessary, and therefore suggesting that it's inappropriate and that the rules ought to be changed. He disagrees with that proposal. And I respect the fact that there are other members in this House who would disagree with his point of view. So with that, I would ask the Honourable Minister of State to continue to be mindful of the question of relevance and to focus on the matter that is before the House. That is the opposition motion that is here today, and to move towards the end of his speech.